Good morning, guys. Welcome to this Wednesday, January 29th. Today is Fed Day. We're going to get the Fed announcement and news and interest rates. We don't have a whole lot to say about there's not a ton of news coming up during the day. We had the mortgage apps come out this morning. It's pretty flat, a little bit to the downside, but fairly flat. Refinance were down a bit more. International trade at 8:30, retail in wholesale inventories as well. I don't think that's going to make a whole big of a difference at 8:30. Oil report at 10:30, and then we had the 2 o'clock. We get the Fed announcement and the conference on the presser after that. So I think it's going to be interesting. I think the main news is going to be the 2 o'clock announcement and what happens after that. So probably going to be an interesting day up to there. I would expect more range bound, kind of a sloppy trading. I'm not necessarily expecting a lot of directional moves ahead of that, but you just never know nowadays. But I think the big piece of news for the day is going to be the Fed announcement, and let's see what they do with interest rates, what they're going to do with interest rates. So looking at the ES and going into today's trading, yesterday we had a pretty good reversal of the gap down and the little sell-off based on DeepSeek. People are putting the pieces together, marketing, the fair amount of lying from the Chinese and so on and so forth. Yeah, okay, it wasn't that great after all. But back up again. But you can tell how spooked the market got when new stuff came out like that. Personally, I think that's probably just a healthy sign that competition may be out there. Don't get too comfortable that you got the lead until you never know when someone comes out of the left field and just um, and just takes the lead, you know. So starting off this range bound, we are still up against this upper edge. They did flirt with taking that out, 61.10 in the overnight. They back off a little bit now, but I would say that they're still trading right at this edge at the 6100s. And they kind of have to clear that if we're going to have a shot at, making that the last go to start extending to the upside. But I'm impressed that they reversed it this hard, and we are right back up again to kind of where we were a few couple of days back here. So I'm going to start off with a slight bias to the upside just to see if they can retest this 61.10 area, potentially take it out. If this trade below that 60.85, I'm taking off that long bias. So pretty aggressive on taking off the bias. If the trade below that 60.40, 35 to 40, I think we are back on the short side of this again. So that's the way I'm looking at this right now. We are reversed the whole day. We're up and bouncing up against resistance. We haven't taken it out quite yet. And if it holds, we're probably going to see rotation to the downside. How far, anyone's guess. But if they start taking out that 35 to 40 support area at the lower end, and that's when this big support area right here, that's when they're going to be this going to start getting ugly. And so that's what I'm looking at for the day session, at least coming out to 2 o'clock. After 2 o'clock, I mean, anything can happen depending on what Powell says. Now, this is going to be the first presser after we have a new administration. And let's see how political these guys are going to get, if they're going to try to stoke cold water on the market or whatever they're going to try to do. It's going to be very interesting to see how they balance this thing. Remember, a few months before the election, yes, did that 50 basis point drop, and it felt pretty political what they were doing. It may not have been, it may be coincidence, but we'll see how they play this going into this new administration, and it's going to be pretty obvious if they're starting to play politics with it. But that's for us to see at 2 o'clock or 2:30 when they do the presser. So starting off with a slight bias to the upside, I'm looking to buy against the 85s here, but that's pretty much it for rotations back up. Maybe if they probe down here a bit, still looking maybe to get long. But if they take out this a 60-85 level and taking off the long bias, going back range bound, still looking to buying against the 70s, this 55s down to the 35s for rotations back up again. That's just a range bound trading approach. But if they take out the 35s and the 25s here, these two support areas, that's when things start opening up on the downside. And that's going to be a bad day. So that's how we get started this morning. They're going to buy weakness. If they take out resistance at 61.10, just stay on the long side. At that point, we're probably going to see gap closure and maybe even a further move to the upside. But I would not be too comfortable that the bulls are just going to take charge in this. We have a most likely a range bound day. I would expect this area of resistance to hold, and I would expect it to trade back in this range. That's what I would be looking for. Not married to the idea, but that's kind of the expectation going into trading day, in the trading day. And then let's see how the whole thing develops. All right. So that's the ES to get started. Looking at the bonds and notes, bonds and the Nasdaq and bonds and notes, bonds and the Nasdaq. So bonds back up again above the 113s, holding the 114 levels. Definitely stay holding on to the back off the lows, the back up here against these upper areas of resistance. So 114.16 to 115 looks like we have a pretty good shot at trading back up to 116s here. But still, they had to clear that 115 area. That's going to be a big area, at low volume area to get through. If they do, I'm pretty sure they'll be running it up to 116. If it holds, we're probably going to stay in this lower range. We still have those little high volume nodes at the 113, at the 112, and the 111s, which we potentially can rotate down to if the market starts heading lower again. So range-bound bonds at this point, trading around that 114 area. If they start running it up to the 115 here, looking for short setups against the 1416s, 1424s, and the 115s for rotations back down again. So that is what we're looking at on the bonds. As always, you're looking to trade the failure to take out resistance. That's kind of the default trade. But no rush right now. We're leaning towards the long side. Looks like they've been trying to take this higher. Yesterday's trading did not quite reverse a whole lot, a little bit, and then they right back up again. So still looking for short setups. If they take out the 115, I think we are heading. Opens up to the upside quite a bit. And on the way down, early weakness. Looking to buy 114.08, 114s down to that 113.24s for rotations back up again. So that's our range for today's trading. Let's see how it's going to go. Looking at Nasdaq, and those guys also in a pretty good setup. Let me see. So they are heading up. They've been nicely moved to the upside here in the overnight, holding on to the gains, backing off a little bit now going into the latter part of the overnight. But the spot for the Nasdaq is to clear that 21,800 area of resistance. There's a low volume area right there at the 830s. Resistance starts here at the 700, around about the 700s. You can see how obvious that edge is now at 760 to 770. And that's this edge up here. So I'm looking for short setups against the well, I'm starting off with a slight bias to the upside to see if they can retest these upper areas and continue a little move from yesterday. So I'm looking to buy against support at the 600s, the 560s, the 530s for rotations back up. If the trade below that 530s, then we are back towards this midpoint here again. And I think that we are staying range bound. So below 530, I'm taking off the long bias, going back range bound. And if this starts trading below these lower areas, the 370, yeah, we're heading back down again at that point. But chances are, if they can't hold that 530, we're going to be staying around that 500 level and go sideways for a bit until we get into that 2 o'clock hour. If they start heading higher, the short setups against the 680s, the 740s, 770s for rotations back down. That is the three obvious areas. And then you have that 840 area up here, which is the low volume area. So all these levels up here could be nice short setups. I would be probably a little bit less aggressive on the first two, but the 770s is a pretty good area of resistance. So if they run it higher there, that would be the spot to try to get short. I think that's going to, and you may also see then if they're up here, try to probe to the upside, and which could look like they're taking out the area, but that could just be a big fake out at that point. So this area right there, pretty good area to try to get short for rotations back down again. And I'm not looking for a sell-off. I think the news has been digested and kind of put in its proper perspective. But it's still, they still had to trade back up again. And we have some news coming up today, the Fed announcement, and then of course on Friday we get in the personal income numbers and that PCE index. So that's how we get started on the ES and NASDAQ. Start off with a slight bias to the upside. Let's see if we can continue this little move. If resistance holds, we are back range bound, probably going into the 2 o'clock hour. Finally, oil and gold. So this is the last day on gold on the February expiration. We're going to roll for tomorrow's session to the April expiration J25. So I'm probably going to stay away from gold today. I don't like to trade the rollovers when the volume rolls. You never know when you get the volume thins out and you don't quite pay attention to it. So gold anyway, they are, gold is up here against that 775 area, 76 area. And if that thing comes out, I think they are going to be heading higher. So I haven't looked at what the J expiration is. I can do that real quick. So looking at the J is trading at 27.92. Okay, so they're gapping up. So they are trading higher. All right. So at this point, we are trading a little bit lower than the next expiration. If they can't take out resistance yet at the 75s, you can see they're starting a low volume area right there at the 75, 76s. If they can't take that out, probably see a rotation back to the 2750s. That's kind of the default trade we are looking at. But I'm starting off with a slight bias to the upside too. See if they can retest this 75s, maybe take it out in a day session. At this point though, if they trade below 65, 64, 65, I'm just taking off that long bias and going back range bound. So fairly aggressive, shifting it. The same thing with ES and NASDAQ, because we are overnight is trading at an upper edge of yesterday's day session. ES is up against resistance. NASDAQ's almost there. And so it's not a big stretch to think they're going to back it off a little bit in the going into the day session. So looking to buy against the 65s on gold. If that comes out, looking for rotation back to the 50s there, 2750s. So that could be a nice short there if they start taking out the 64 for rotation back to value. So that is that's gold. On the way down on gold, though, you can still look for buying opportunities against 58 and 53 and 48, just a little bit less aggressive. You never know if they are backing off a level or two more than you would expect. But it's at that point, you're trading it as a range-bound market, though. Oil. Also a slow grind to the downside. You can see how it started. It's by any means the trajectory is going to be to the downside on oil. This last hullabaloo from the Biden administration putting up these weird sanctions at the very end is starting to fizzle out. I think we'll see. There's probably going to be some concern in the oil market until I think they settle the Ukraine situation or figure out a path forward there. I think that could be a pretty good move, pretty good scenario for oil. It doesn't need to be, because I think part of the negotiation is to drive down these oil prices so that they come to the table. So oil is probably going to be on a trajectory to the downside. But in terms of geopolitical threats, that's I think is one out there, and which potentially could keep oil a little bit higher than it should be. But I think, as I said, trajectories to the downside, it's not going to go straight down. So looking to sell strength, 73.60, 74s, 74.30, 74.50s for rotations back down. Above 74.50, I'm taking off the short bias and going back range bound on oil. On the way down, Not going to be very aggressive on buying. The two opportunities really is just that 73 and the 72.50s. And I think the 72.50s, if that comes out, we have a pretty good shot at this low volume area. At that, we have a pretty good shot at trading right back down here to that 70 level. So that is oil, all right? So there we go. Trading this from the trading oil from the short side. I would say primarily range bound because you can see the trading days, they're grinding a little bit lower, but they're primarily running in a range back and forth. So don't get sucked into this, hop on the short side and it's going to go down. And it's not happening that way. And so don't get caught in it. Back to the ES, and so far, all right, backing off a little bit. We're down here at support, so they take out the 85. Since, as I said, we're taking off the long bias and going back range bound. And NASDAQ is also backing off a little bit. All right, so we'll see what happens. So good trading, guys. And I'll see you back at 11:30 for the next update. All right, guys, later.